Really, I have kind of decided that I am not interested in extending sympathy or empathy towards the animals which are harmed in the creation of my pleasure, because I don't gain anything by feeling miserable as a result of that.
Hey everyone, for those of you who've watched my channel for a little while, well, you'll already know that I'm a huge fan of the interactive and engaging learning platform Brilliant, who are sponsoring today's video. Brilliant offers thousands of lessons, which, as well as being crafted by award-winning teachers and professionals, are designed to make learning about maths, data science, and computer science fun, intuitive, and importantly, effective. Their courses include studying how technology works, analyzing data and statistics, problem solving, and so much more. The way that Brilliant creates courses means that it's suitable for all skill levels from beginner to advanced. So in other words, you can dive in and start learning no matter your previous experience. And because the workflow is completely flexible, it means you can learn at the pace that's best for you. So if you want a visually engaging and fun way to expand your knowledge and skills, well, you can get started on Brilliant for free for 30 days and also get 20% off a premium subscription by going to brilliant.org/Earthling-ed. Now let's get back to the debate at hand, but a huge thank you to Brilliant for sponsoring today's video.
Hi Wells,
Hi.
It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Ed, and today I am at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, of course, and I have a banner that says, "Why aren't you vegan yet?" You've very kindly waited, you've very kindly sat down, so tell me, why aren't you vegan yet?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Ed.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for coming out to Providence.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
As far as why I'm not vegan, I've thought about it, and one thing I'll start by reconciling.
Yeah.
I'm objectively in the wrong.
Okay.
I'm not on the right side of history, not on the right side of the animal product industry, but I am not here for the industry or anyone else but myself.
Right.
I have a very hedonistic approach to the world and everything, and I think meat tastes very good. I enjoy consuming animal products. It makes it easier to get the nutrition which I need to get around every day, and because of that, it's quite easy for me to rationalize eating animal products.
Yeah.
I don't consider animals to be at the same level of sentience as humans.
Sure.
I consider them to be significantly below that. I believe anyone would recognize that. So I don't feel bad in using them as a means to a better quality of life for myself and many other people around the world.
Sure. I mean, I would push back a little bit on the nutrients aspect of it. You can easily get nutrients in a plant-based diet. It's just about knowing where to get them, and once you know where, it's easy. But I'm interested. There seems to be a little contradiction. Yeah. On the one hand, you say that you are ethically in the wrong, and you're on the wrong side of history. Yeah. But then you take this attitude of saying, well, ethically, animals don't seem to matter as much because as long as you like how they taste, that's all that's really relevant to the conversation. So is there not an inherent contradiction there?
I will say, just because they matter less does not mean they matter at all.
Yeah.
I would say my enjoyment outranks a lot of their needs and desires. And also, the main reason why I say I'm ethically in the wrong, the meat, animal products, all of them, horrible for the environment.
Yes.
I believe that is a much bigger issue than the actual suffering or misfortune of the animals.
Yeah.
Because I think the well-being of the world takes high precedent over their individual experience.
But does it take precedent over your taste buds? What's more important, the world or your taste buds?
Obviously the world, but I'm not.
Obviously.
Yes,
But
but
you
I'm not
haven't
going to
done
be
that.
here for
Right.
the entire world.
Right.
So I don't actually have to consider the scope of the entire universe, the entire world, and its longevity. I only have to consider the 80 to 100 years I have left. And within that, my personal hedonism is massively inflated because that is there for the entirety of my time alive, whereas the world is only here for a small glimmer of that.
Yeah. I mean, 80 to 100 years might be optimistic if you continue to consume animal products.
Yeah.
But that point aside, are you saying then that obviously poor people in the world who are suffering as a result of climate change and animals who are suffering as a result of meat, dairy, and egg consumption, they don't matter to you?
So I think there are a lot more people in the world suffering right now as a result of things such as not being able to access enough food, not being able to access a high quality of food. So I feel like things like them not being able to eat animal products, them being able to consume things which might not be ethically sourced, I think that would improve their quality of life more than, say, if the world was 3 degrees cooler.
But what about you? You know, you accepted that eating animal products is bad for the environment. We recognize that the environmental damage is bad because it destroys people's homes, it destroys people's ability to grow food, basically it increases suffering. Yeah. So we increase human suffering as a result of climate change, and you recognize that meat, dairy, and egg consumption is a driver of climate change and it is a serious environmental concern. On top of that, we recognize that the consumption of animal products increases suffering for animals. You may view their their suffering is less, but there's still suffering that exists. They still matter in some way, of course. So by consuming animal products, you yourself have already admitted that that increases animal suffering and is a leading driver of something which is increasing human suffering. But you say that your hedonistic enjoyment of these products is more important than that. So the question is, do you agree with that statement? Are your hedonistic sensory pleasure pursuits more important than human and animal suffering?
I feel like we can't approach that as a holistic question where it's absolutely the enjoyment of eating a hamburger is greater than all the human and animal suffering which is caused by the meat industry as a whole. I consume a very, very marginal fraction of the amount of products here.
So does everyone. But everyone consuming a marginal amount contributes to the problem that we have now. If everyone stopped consuming that marginal amount, it would no longer be a problem. So we are, as individuals, responsible for what we as a collective are causing.
Now, we have to separate the amount of suffering which is going on from just the consumption, because not all of the suffering from animals is coming as a result of people just eating the food. A lot of the things which cause them to suffer is the practices in the meat production industry. And a lot of the reason which people are suffering environmentally is not due to people simply eating animal products, but tons of corporations and production facilities are really, really more damaging than any individual. My footprint is microscopic compared to those of many corporations and production facilities.
But who pays those corporations to exist? Why does Tyson exist?
Yes, me, but food production is not the only source of carbon emissions and things.
No, certainly not, but it is a source. I'm not saying that it's the only cause, but I am saying that by the logic that you have used, it is a cause. And what we have is a situation where you don't have to partake in that. You don't have to consume animal-based products. You can consume plant-based products. And as a consequence of doing that, you reduce the harm and suffering that you cause. Now, we can talk about the environment. I'm more interested in talking about animal ethics in a way, but of course the environment, the reason we're talking about it is because you highlighted that as being a main concern. But what I think is interesting is you highlighted it as being a main concern, but not enough of a concern for you to get past your hedonistic desires. And I guess the question from that then is, outside of that, is anything morally justified if it provides the individual partaking in that action a hedonistic pleasure?
Really? I have kind of decided that I am not interested in extending sympathy or empathy towards the animals which are harmed in the creation of my pleasure, because I don't gain anything by feeling miserable as a result of that.
No, but does a rapist gain anything from feeling miserable to the person that they rape? No, they don't. So they don't feel anything. But does that make it morally justified as long as they don't feel anything in terms of sympathy or empathy?
The degree of autonomy possessed by an animal versus possessed by a human being is entirely different.
Okay, so what if someone rapes an animal?
Well, that's still very fucked up, because it is a violation of some autonomy. It is significantly less unethical than a human.
So raping an animal is a violation of their autonomy, but cutting their throat is not?
See, I believe the degree of suffering is very relevant. Meat production, where we minimize the amount of suffering, very sort of organized, neat euthanization of them before production of meat, that is far more ethical than, for example, did you see the Fairlife videos?
I did.
That is an entirely different world than if they were to be killed instantly by some sort of lethal injection or breaking of the spine so they don't feel any pain, they don't suffer. Those are very different worlds. I do think we need to move towards a more ethical production of meat, but that's not to say that it is impossible to produce it in a way where it is reasonable to still consume meat.
So if we tranquilize an animal, can we then rape them?
That is, once again, a lot better than if we were to force them to endure it.
I agree. But is it moral? Is it more moral to do that or not to do that?
Can I ask, why is it important whether I think it's moral or not to rape an animal?
Because well, I'll come on to that. So the question is it more moral to tranquilize an animal and rape them when they're unconscious, or to not do that at all?
Obviously, it's more moral to not do that at all.
Okay. So is it more moral to kill an animal by euthanizing them, or to not kill them at all?
There's also a catch here. We can't equate killing an animal for food and raping them. Those are not the same. The amount of things and the amount of people who benefit from taking the nutrients from an animal, lives can actually be saved. There are actual nutrients which can go to people who are starving, people who need to eat.
But those nutrients can be found from plants, and you consuming an animal doesn't provide nutrients for people in the world who need it to survive. It just provides nutrients to you, and you don't need those nutrients from animals. So you're not helping starving people.
I'm not. Would you say that universally all people should be vegan?
Those of us who can be should be.
Those of us who can be, okay. So you would not object to the use and killing of animals for food in places where it is not nearly so easy to access plant products for all nutrients.
When we talk about ease of access, it becomes a little bit more nuanced and more complicated. But if someone lives in an area of the world where they don't have access to plant-based foods, where they're not in an area where they can grow plant-based foods, and all of these things that are required for us to be vegan, then of course the conversation changes slightly because there are different circumstances. But for those of us who live in Providence and for those of us who have access to be vegan and can be vegan, then it becomes that issue of morality because it's an issue of a choice. And we can choose to do things to animals or not do things to animals. And so for me, whilst undeniably there are more moral ways that we can raise and kill animals, just as there are more moral ways that we could sedate and rape an animal, that doesn't mean that those things are okay when we have the option not to do those things. So I wouldn't want to sexually exploit an animal, and I also don't want to I don't want to kill an animal when I don't have to. And that for me is the crux of that. If we have the plant-based option, that's better for the environment and it reduces animal harm. So for me that becomes the preferable choice. What do you think?
Really, once again, I think it just boils down to a measure of like how valuable is it to save that animal from pain? How much should I care? How much of a stake do I personally have? And at the end of the day, I have looked at how damaging it is to the environment, to the animal, over the span of my lifetime, versus how much joy I'm going to ascertain from that. And I have decided that in a pursuit of my own good life, in a pursuit of my own hedonism, I'm more focused on that.
Sure, but do you not understand that logic there, that self-centered logic, could then transcend to other people doing bad things to other humans based with using the same criteria? Your moral distinction is, well, I think that my value or the enjoyment I get from this is higher or worth more than that of the individual who's suffering. But we could use that to justify anything. It's just you've created an arbitrary line there saying that, well, an animal can die for me as long as I enjoy the taste of their product, of their flesh.
So I don't think I've created an arbitrary line here. The line is very clear. Actual autonomy and sentience.
I believe animals are sentient or not sentient?
No, they're not.
So sentience is about feeling, the awareness of something. Now, you yourself have already said that reducing animal harm, like not farming them in factory farms, not doing things like that, is preferable. And the reason it's preferable is it reduces suffering. Now, if that's preferable, that comes with the acknowledgement that animals can suffer. So they have the sense, they can sense things. So they are sentient. Are they as sentient as you and I? Potentially not. But they are sentient in and of themselves.
Perhaps I used the wrong word. I probably should have used something such as sapience. I think our right to autonomy and belief is entirely based on perception. For example, if someone wants bodily autonomy after they die, they want their body to be cremated, they don't want their organs to be donated. They have a right to die thinking that's going to happen. Once they are dead, they are gone. We can use their organs. It doesn't matter to them. They're dead.
Yeah, absolutely. But the point is, when they're alive, we wouldn't kill them just to harvest their organs. In the same way with animals, we shouldn't kill them just because we want their meat. Sure, if you find an animal who's dead on the side of the road, consuming them doesn't cause any harm or suffering. But that doesn't mean that we should just find an animal and kill them because we want to consume their meat.
So I think the idea is really, can we kill animals in a way where they are aware that they're going to suffer?
But it's not about necessarily just their awareness of suffering, it's about the killing of life in general. So let me ask you this question. If a dog walks past now, for example, and I go up and shoot that dog, and that dog is not aware that they're going to die and they don't suffer, does that then become a morally justified action?
Morally justified and significantly less unethical or different. I think that is a lot different than if you look the dog in the eyes, you hit it, you cause it to suffer, and then you kill it.
Yes.
That's unnecessary suffering.
I agree, but would it be more or less moral to let that dog walk past and not kill them? What is more or less moral in that situation?
Why are you killing the dog?
Because I enjoy it. It gives me hedonistic pleasure.
Does anyone own that dog? Does it belong to anyone?
Stray dog.
See, I have two approaches to this. A very socialized answer and then an objectivist one, which I approach. I do believe that humans are above any other life form on this planet. We are the only sapient ones. We very much own the world around us. We very much own the world around us. There's no other species on Earth which has any sort of civilization or community the way that we do. And so objectively, I do believe that we have a right to interact with the entire world around us as a sort of resource.
So we can kill them if we want to?
Yes. But there is also a very socialized version of myself which thinks that is very bad. People are attached to animals. People will be upset. So it's very unsavory and not good to kill an animal because that would be very upsetting to people.
So if you and I walk down where there's no one else around and no one else is going to see it, we can shoot all the animals we see as long as they don't know about it.
See, that socialization still exists. I don't magically change once I enter a vacuum. I have grown up to be the person I am. While objectively I might think, yes, that is not necessarily harmful, I would also need to know, does anyone own that dog? Are those runaway pets or are they entirely stray graves. Are they hungry or are they satisfied? There are a lot of things to consider, but objectively, at my core...
So why do you care about whether or not they're hungry or satisfied? Why do you care about their desires or their wants?
I've been socialized too.
So your values and morals is based purely on socialization, and what I mean by that is the reason that you don't want to say harm me or harm another human because socially speaking we've perceived that to be wrong?
See, it's very hard to distinguish between myself in a vacuum, my purest self, and myself as socialized, because I exist as I am. I exist having grown up. You wouldn't be vegan if you were raised in a vacuum. If you were raised in a white room with no animals, you wouldn't care what an animal was. You wouldn't care about being vegan. It wouldn't matter to you.
I probably wouldn't be eating too many animals either in such a situation. But I guess the point of that question is to say that the ability for our species to evolve and adapt and change and all the progress that we've made morally has come from challenging what we've been socialized to believe. You know, what is cultural and what is traditional has never been up until this point what is automatically moral. There are many cultural things that are deeply immoral around the world and probably here as well, of course.
Well, I don't think you can say that. To say that something is objectively immoral, to say that's not immoral at all, that's ridiculous.
Okay, but so are you saying that there's nothing in the world that you would classify as being immoral outside of what we socially perceive to be moral or immoral?
Yes, there are no objective morals.
There are no objective morals in terms of there's nothing granted to us by a deity. I don't believe that. But I believe that we create morals and we can create something, maybe not objective, maybe objective is the wrong word, but we can create an impression of what is moral versus immoral based on what we intellectually understand. So I would say that it's immoral to harm you because I know doing so causes you suffering. I'd also say it's immoral to shoot you even if you don't know about it, because it's not just about suffering, it's about you and your autonomy and your rights to have your autonomy respected. And I think the same is true of non-human animals. They may not be as sentiently or as sentient and as intellectually complex as we are, but they do suffer, they do feel, they do experience happiness and pleasure. They do experience things that make their life valuable to them in the same way that we experience things that make our lives valuable to us. Should we not respect their autonomy as well?
I don't think you can say that they experience things that make their life valuable to them. I don't think they have this perception of, I am alive, my life is valuable, things will make it better or worse. I think they have an instinct. That is why, for example, they don't have to be raised and taught to do things. Those things are innate. From birth, animals want to survive.
So
they know that.
Yeah, so do we though.
No, we don't. We are taught to do everything. We cannot provide for ourselves. We don't know how to function. We traded that ability for the ability to learn. We need socialization to function. Most animals don't.
Actually, the reason that we are born so underdeveloped is because of the human anatomy. If we were to reach full gestation in a human woman, then we wouldn't be able to be born through the birth canal. So the reason we were born so undeveloped is not a trade-off. The trade-off is so we can walk on two legs. That's the trade-off, and with narrower hips. So it's just purely biological. But a human being has an innate desire to survive. If God forbid, if there was a shooter here, our first reaction would be to get out of the way because our innate desire is to survive, to flee situations that cause us fear or terror. But animals are the same.
Yes,
they prioritize pleasure over pain, happiness over suffering.
I think they prioritize it in a much different way. We can perceive what is going on. We can organize how to attain pleasure even if it's not directly in front of us.
Well, so can animals. They understand that fetch provides them pleasure. So they know that going on a walk will equal fetch. So they want to go on a walk because they know conceptually that when they are walking, it provides them pleasure.
Not all animals can conceive of that.
Not all animals,
Wide range.
Not all animals, but the animals we conventionally exploit, cows, chickens, pigs, are among the most intellectual animals that exists on the planet, especially compared to, say, insects and smaller animals. So actually the animals who we exploit are up there as being some of the most intelligent animals on the planet.
Well, really, if we consider the actual most intelligent ones, dolphins, elephants, chimpanzees, we've actually started to extend much greater protections to them.
Yes.
Because, in a way relevant to humans, they are actually perceived as intelligent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And compared to something like a cow or a chicken, not at all. The comparison between a chimpanzee's processing power and a chicken's, they're worlds apart.
But is a chicken's processing power enough to make the consumption of a plant more moral than the killing of them? You know, a sentient being who suffers, who feels, and who has an awareness of happiness and pleasure and such.
In a vacuum, sure. However, I don't exist in a vacuum. I exist where I consume the plant or the animal.
Yeah.
I prefer the animal, and because of how almost insignificant of a degree of autonomy and consciousness they have, or not consciousness, but sapience, say, I believe that my personal joy can tip those scales. I believe it can for plenty of people.
I think people perceive that it can, but whether or not it should, I suppose, is a different question entirely. Of course it can, in the same way that anyone can use their morality to rationalize a whole host of horrible things. People can rationalize things to make it seem like they can do something, but the question is whether they should do something. And so I guess the question is, should you be contributing to a system that is worse for the environment and increases animal suffering compared to the alternative that you could support instead?
I think really there isn't a whole lot more to discuss here because we brought back to the very beginning.
Yeah.
At the start, I recognized, should I? No, I should not do that. But that doesn't mean I cannot justify it for myself. That doesn't mean I cannot make it worth it. Just because it's wrong doesn't mean it can't be worth it.
But that's how everyone justifies all the bad things that they do. You know, people who do bad things, who murder or rape or cause harm, don't go home and think, wow, I'm a really bad person. They go home and they justify it. They morally rationalize it. An incel morally rationalizes their actions and behaviors based on this victim mentality that they have. So people can rationalize and justify almost anything. But the question is should. And you've already said that you shouldn't. And that's the most important part of this.
I recognized at the beginning.
Yes.
I understand that I am on the wrong side of things still. However, I just don't think that it's wrong enough to where I will be dissatisfied with myself, I will hate myself, it will reduce my quality of life due to the guilt I feel. I feel like to me it can be worth it, although even though I'm doing a wrong thing, that doesn't necessarily just control everything I do.
Do you think that's okay?
Do I think it's okay?
Yeah. So if anyone has that attitude, that's fine.
I think you can't extend that to saying it's okay for people to be rapists, because once again, the degree of violation of autonomy and sapience is very different when you are exploiting another human being.
But raping animals. Raping animals. Raping animals who aren't suffering. They're unconscious, we tranquilize them. Go for it?
I would not encourage going for it.
Why not though? Because doesn't that just contradict your whole framework that you just outlined?
No, the highest level, the transmission of STDs and things, it's very
okay, but you only rape animals. You're not going to pass those on to humans.
Well, I say that's significantly more ethical than raping humans. If someone has an uncontrollable desire, I feel like that is a much healthier way to engage with it.
Yeah.
If they would instead be a threat to human society, yes, I'd say that's preferable.
What if they're not going to be a threat, but they're just sexually attracted to animals? They're not interested. They're not going to rape humans. The question is, do they rape the animal or not rape the animal?
Well, do I have to hear about it? Do I have to look at it?
Well, what do you think? Do you think it's right or wrong?
I don't think it matters.
You don't think it matters?
If it doesn't touch me, it doesn't matter. That's the same reason I can justify being able to eat animal products. I don't have to watch them die. I don't have to deal with it. I'm aware of the idea of it, but that doesn't necessarily touch me.
No. So I guess it's selfish then.
Yes, it's selfish.
Would you say that you are selfish?
In my consumption of animal products, yes.
And in your I guess not just consumption of animal products, but your inability to want to help reduce animal suffering in all its different forms. Your lack of objection to people doing things to animals that we would normally in society, which is interesting because you talk about socialization, but then often what you're talking about now is not what we've been socialized to believe. This hedonistic narcissism is not what we've necessarily been socialized to believe. A lot of people are compassionate and empathetic to even animals and humans they won't meet, but you're not. So you're actually contradicting the socialization that you appealed to earlier.
See, socialization means conditioning to function in society. I feel like
not to function to the standards of society.
Yeah, to function to the standards of society.
But you're contradicting the standards of society by pursuing a hedonism and a pleasure at all costs, which most people don't pursue. Most people are more empathetic and seek to be more compassionate and understanding.
I think what we have created an idea for is this desire for everyone to seem far more ethical and desirable than they are.
Maybe so.
I mean, for example, social media. Have you clicked through Instagram stories, the amount of infographics there, the amount of people who actually care about those things? The amount of vegan infographics you'll see versus people who would actually take the time to work towards that, who would go to a protest or something.
Yeah.
It's worlds different. We have been socialized to want to seem good much more than we are good.
That's actually very true. You're right. We kind of virtue signal in that sense, don't we? To have the impression of seeming like people that care about these issues. And I suppose that's true. I guess maybe you're right. Most people would sit down and maybe claim to be more empathetic than you, but still go and eat animal products just as you do. So maybe there is an almost appeasing to one's sense of wanting to seem morally right in that sense. And that's true. But I suppose at least they have the reconciliation that they should empathize. And again, you've used that word should as well. But what would it take for you to recognize that should be the most important driver in ascertaining whether or not you continue to consume animal products?
It really wouldn't come from an ethical standpoint. It would come from a clear, measured one. If there was a clear-cut consequence, if there was a law, something like that, where I could not eat animal products, that's what it would take.
So you'd only do it if it jeopardized your liberties and freedoms.
Once again, it's still my own pleasure.
Absolutely. So others' liberties and others' freedoms and others' autonomy, more importantly, not relevant.
Not nearly as much.
Not nearly as much. I'm not sad though.
Yes, I think going back to the whole virtue signaling thing, it's less that I'm significantly more selfish than the average person. More so, I think I am more honest, more transparent.
But don't virtue signal. Don't. But do the right thing. Do the thing you say you should do. Don't virtue signal and obviously I appreciate you're not going to lie to me and say, I appreciate you not lying to me, but why not not just virtue signal, but actually do the thing that you say you should do.
The joy I derive from being good in that sense is, for me, significantly less than the joy I derive from being able to eat a nice hamburger.
Well, we're gonna end it here because I guess we're gonna end up going around in circles. You can still enjoy hamburgers that are plant-based. This Plant City apparently is this great, 4-restaurant dining hall that's all vegan. You can still enjoy a good hamburger that doesn't cost someone.
Agree with you?
Yes.
In my experience, the plant-based hamburgers, they taste like shit.
Yeah, maybe. But that doesn't mean that they all do. And
That's
maybe
just as simple as a personal preference. What foods I like, what I don't. I'm a picky eater.
and potentially. If I may, perhaps your preference is somewhat guided by your desire to continue upholding the perception that you can carry on doing something. And I guess what I mean by that,
I can understand that.
Yeah. Maybe you eat the vegan hamburger and go, I don't like this as much because you want to find a justification for why you shouldn't eat that burger more often than the other burger.
In the same way that if there was somehow a magically perfectly synthesized meat, very ethically attained roadkill or something, I'm sure plenty of vegans wouldn't consume that because they also want to uphold the idea of being vegan.
Yeah, maybe so. But the issue of whether or not someone should or shouldn't do those things is different to this, because obviously we're talking about reduction of harm in this sense rather than just the pursuit of an ideological puritanism.
Yeah.
Something like that, right? Anyway, Wells, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for me, but I have to push back just a little bit at the end because I do think it is sad to not do something that you recognise maybe you should. And I think that the criteria for why you've assigned why you won't do, whilst I appreciate you not lying and giving me BS, because I know that may be easy to do, and I appreciate you not doing that, I think that there is a selfishness there that concerns me. Because I think that we can do better and look beyond ourselves. We're not going to be perfect. We're never going to live in an idealistic utopia. And I'm not trying to virtue signal and make myself seem to be this perfect. I'm not. But I think that we can also hold ourselves more accountable to do things in a better way. Yeah? All right. Thanks, Wells. Appreciate your time. All right. Take care. Bye now.